Vijay, a colleague of mine from Colombia, to come up. Vijay is amazing. He's been taking on the charge of reforming Africa's water and energy systems from the bottom up. And I can tell you it's not easy to go in. And unlike many people who helicopter in and helicopter out, Vijay is helicoptered in most of the time.
You know, the people responsible for all this are sitting right here. I was doing my own little research in my cubicle. Okay, now that's how I was, right, Peter, before. So I want to tell you a story how my first encounter with water, because I'm actually an energy sort of field person. So I'd gone to Uganda at the, this one member of parliament, Johnson Nakue, knew Pedro Sanchez. And I ran into Pedro in Ghana. That's how I got involved with all this stuff, right? About, 20 years ago. So I go to the communities. I said, let's first listen to them, what is the issue, right? So we had many, many meetings. And Ugandans are like, even if there are like 40 of them, it's like a, very, very structured dialogue, as if it's a, committee meeting of the federal government or something, like they introduce themselves very polite. So all the men talked about how important electricity is. They didn't have electricity grid or anything in 20-kilometer radius, right? So then all these women are there, so I asked the interpreter, can we ask them what the issue is for them? They said the issue is not energy. The issue is water. So I said, can you describe? And that's when I realized how smart they were. They said, no, hard to describe, but do you have an hour? We'll show you what the problem is. So I go with them, and then I have to go down this kind of slippery, muddy, 200 meters down a slope. And then there is this spring that, they give me these 2 20-liter jerry cans. We fill them up, and then they say, okay, now we got to go up. So I said, I'm convinced. I understand the problem, because if I walk up back the way we came with 2 20-liter jerry can of water, I'll die. And then, I won't be able to do anything. So, but they knew exactly. And so that's when so that's how I got started. And so I'll in the Africa setting. But since then, I've gotten interested in this last mile issue for cooking, electricity, water. So let me see. And I start with this slide because I showed it yesterday. I was giving a talk somewhere. And in New York City right now, electricity is 40 cents a kilowatt hour. And the natural gas, which prices vary, corrected for inflation, is the cheapest in 120 years. So the actual cost of energy is nothing. It's sort of like if sometimes maybe similarity to water. The actual value of water we don't value. The delivery is what adds it up. You need the backup capacity. And the biggest component is the very top, the maintenance of the infrastructure that is bringing it to you, okay? The actual cost of the energy itself, unlike, water at least, is everywhere, it's supposedly free, but energy is not free, you have to buy it and all. Even then, its cost is negligible. That when I said 6 cents, that's like averaging over all this. Right now, you can buy that gas-produced electricity for 2 cents, but you are paying 40 cents. Okay, so the point I wanted to make is, it's one thing to start out saying I have this stuff, but then we have to think about what it will take to get it to the consumers. And when we start to think about that, the solution you had, right? Another example I want to give is in the US, rooftop solar, or for example, heat pumps. And I'm not putting down electric vehicles for a reason. The entire hardware cost of that, installed inverter, steel, cement, mounting it, solar panels, actually, since I made this slide yesterday, they've gone down even more. It's probably 130 right now for a kilowatt. So all that is costing $400. And in New York City, if you want to install, it's $5,000 a kilowatt. So I think, and then the IRA is, of course, going to focus on the 400, or actually on the 150. And I'm like, guys, you have this $4,000 to focus on, which is about workforce training. There was a study that showed that in Germany it's lower cost, but the electrician is getting paid more per hour in Germany than here. So I think this is, worthwhile thinking through. Okay, so now, if you were to connect people to infrastructure today in the US, it's ridiculously expensive. I gave an average number, 10,000. In New York City, it's 3 or 4 times that if you were to do it new. But India, for example, created a gas network, and it's on its way to doing it for most cities in India, where you have a place you bring in the big pipeline, the main, the sub-main, the distribution, the meter, everything, $300 a household. World Bank loan, IFC's World Bank loan, $1 a month. In other words, absolutely new infrastructure. So worth keeping that in mind. In Uganda, it's a little more expensive, landlocked country, and so on. But and I want to point out that the issues of maintenance are even more challenging in India and Africa. Because the consumer, most people connected to the grid in East Africa, where I can give you this number, spend less than $1 a month on electricity. So if there's a community of 200, 300 households spending $300 a month, if there is something goes wrong and you have to send a vehicle and a person from the nearest town, the entire month's revenue is gone. The entire revenue, not just the maintenance part of it. So that's the challenge is how, so if we can make it work in those settings and how we can make it work in that setting, we may learn things for our systems here. How do we do things? Okay, so now I'm going to give an example of where this community in Bolivia is in middle of the jungle. We had to bring stuff on a boat, okay? But the point is not the technology. We really had to have dialogue with the community before, what is they want. You see that the whole assembly is done by them. The entire wire that you see in yellow and blue was done by them. And they are the ones, right? By the way, we learned from IKEA that you also need to just include the tools and the screwdrivers and the auger in the package and have a little, and that changes the game completely. And you don't have to build full capacity on day one. It can be added. Modular, not bespoke. So otherwise, most projects I've seen spend more time in figuring out the sizing and design than the cost of the hardware. And I'm like, guys, that's just not so. But here's what I think I learned is that even in the poorest communities, what they did not sort of tell me in advance is that they need a mechanism for transparent financial management that does not rely on the cloud. We initially brought everything on the cloud and it was a disaster, right? So it has to be self-contained, automated, dynamic, and the key was that these software allowed you to allocate a finite resource, because these were either solar plus battery, or whether it's water. Yesterday I was telling the energy people who are very worried about variability of solar and wind, I said, wait till you meet a hydrologist. I mean, the entire thing is variability, right? And then I'll give another example on water, but I wanted to so that was for household electricity, right? Smallholder irrigation, Senegal. It was an interesting experience to realize that if you are small in land holding, and India tried this and failed before doing, I think, this calculation. They rolled out a program to subsidize solar pumps, and what they did not appreciate is, if you size the solar pump for power for a certain lift, you have surplus energy. Utilization is very low. If you size it for energy, you don't have enough power. What that means is, for solar, you got to maximize utilization. Now, so that was one lesson. So that means we have to create systems for ensuring that sharing. The other innovation was that the battery was just killing the economics of the whole thing. So this entire system is batteryless, okay? And I always try to point out, it's not, it's the community, it's the way they organize themselves, the way they took a loan from a local bank, the way they have sorted out, these were farmer groups and all that, and you needed a market. So it's not just energy or water, okay? So that's a kind of humbling experience right there. But the key here was, there is no battery. They turn on loads as the sun comes up, okay? So this is the deepest form of flexibility. And we are trying to here have entire conferences on grid flexibility. These guys are doing extreme flexibility, but of course they are making some compromise. And the compromise they are making is, they would rather have 10-cent electricity and use it when it's available, as opposed to 50-cent electricity for 24/7. So I think I'm learning that the word reliability has to be used very carefully. Predictability is more important than reliability. Reliability 24/7 can lead to brittle systems that can fail horribly, okay? So then, I want to, this is something that has been bugging me, so water for drinking is not a massive amount of water. It's a very small amount of water. It's water for agriculture. I think Manu pointed this out to me about 15, 20 years ago. It's like 2 orders of magnitude more. So I want to start with the following. People in agriculture use acre feet, But for drinking water, I want to introduce a new unit, okay? So in India, Fanta is very popular. My son loves Fanta. In New York, you can only buy 20-ounce Fanta because they don't want to make it smaller. That has enough sugar that sugar to produce takes 150 liters of water, which is about the daily per capita consumption of water in urban India. So I am now sort of measuring water in terms of Fantas, right? So 1 Fanta per day. America is basically 2 Fantas per day, but India, urban, is 1 Fanta per day. India exported 10 million tons of sugar, 2022, okay? They exported away the drinking water needs met at the urban level, which is higher, 150 liters per capita per day, for 500 million Indians. So, there is a macro level issue in how, some countries will have to think about it, because they will then see, oh, I can make some money by exporting sugar, but you have to think about that. And the political economy of it, the challenges. So, the ideas we had back then also when we worked on this was, its rent is, so to speak, captured by the wealthy. It was mentioned earlier today. But fix it, cap it, give it to them for 5-10 years, and say that, look, you're going to get it for 5-10 years, and we will get out of this. But without that, India is just sucking up its water, using its energy. Please remind me of time. Oh, I'm done. Okay. So let me. Other thing is, in rural systems, protecting the catchment leads to better outcomes than trying to clean it afterwards. There are ways to do it. We did the same thing for water that I talked about, and so on. So payment systems were key, prepaid transactions, frictionless transactions, and all that. But I want to end with a very positive note. In India, for the first time, a rather obscure state of Odisha, which was considered one of the not so developed state, has taken on the task of 24/7 water in cities. Now, imagine 24/7 water in India, you'd fall off your chair, right? Because it's barely 1 hour. It's not the first results show that the water use declined. 24/7 water allowed it to be cleaner, because when it was not 24/7, things were infiltrating back into the pipe. So, and they are doing it for, if it is not subsidized and all, for 16 cents a day, $5 a month. If you privately buy tanker water like somebody showed, it would be 50. Of course, they don't have 50, so they buy less water. So I wanted to say that there are things that are happening. So I'll end with this, that we need to rethink. And I'm not sure conventional delivery mechanisms are there to do it. We need to think of how to eliminate maintenance using sensors, meters, all that. If it can be done in sub-Saharan Africa, it can be done here, and all that. So I think that's it. Okay, I'll stop right there. We need to figure out a way to move. The World Banks and the governments don't want transaction costs, so they want to give $1 billion loan. Oh, that means they want to build a big $1 billion thing. But that is not what's needed. What is needed is $110 million things. But that requires soft work. So we have to talk to people who know how to do the upfront soft work. And of course, institutional, that is the key to, and not even 110 million things. I'm talking about 10,000 systems of 100,000 each. And how do we do the soft work for that, the workforce development that? I was shocked that some of the systems we deployed, when they were deployed with community involved from the beginning, using a cooperative, have lasted longer and better maintained. Whereas a lot of people sort of have said only private. So anyway, thank you.